Two people, same city, same age, 34. One earns $87,000 a year. The other earns $103,000. The difference is $16,000 before taxes, which means after the government finishes with it, we're talking about roughly $900 a month. That's it, $900. And yet, these two people are not living the same life. Not even close. The person at $87,000 checked their bank account this morning before saying yes to dinner plans tonight. Not because dinner was expensive, because the habit of checking never fully turns off. There's a background calculation running. Quiet, constant, invisible to everyone except the person running it, that touches every decision. The flight for the wedding, the dentist appointment you've been putting off, the coat you've needed since October. The person at $103,000 did not check their account this morning. They just said yes to dinner. They thought about whether they wanted to go, not whether they could. That distinction, want versus can, is the entire story we're telling today, because $100,000 in income is one of the most misunderstood thresholds in personal finance. People treat it like a finish line, or they dismiss it. Oh, 6 figures doesn't mean anything anymore. Have you seen rent prices? Both of those takes miss what's actually happening at this number. My name is Nick, and I've spent a lot of time studying the exact point where money stops running your life and starts working for you instead. Today, we're going to live that transition in real numbers, real psychology, and one very uncomfortable twist at the end that most personal finance content will never tell you. Because $100,000 gives you something real, and it's not what you think it is. Before we talk about what $100,000 unlocks, we need to sit in what comes before it, not skim past it, actually sit in it. Because if you've lived it, you know it's not just tight, it's a specific kind of exhausting that has nothing to do with being irresponsible or bad with money, and if you haven't lived it, you need to understand it, because it's the financial reality of roughly 40% of full-time American workers right now. Meet Layla. She's 31. She works in healthcare administration in a mid-sized city, not Manhattan, not rural Tennessee, somewhere in the middle. She earns $52,000 a year. After federal taxes, state taxes, and FICA, her take-home is about $3,350 a month. That's the whole board. Rent for a decent one-bedroom, nothing fancy, just safe and functional, is $1,200. There goes $1,200 before she's bought a single thing to eat. Car payment on a used vehicle, $280. Insurance and gas, $290. Groceries on a careful budget, $350. Health insurance employee share, $140. Phone and internet, because you cannot exist professionally without them, $120. Student loan payment, $250. Total, $2,630. That leaves Layla $720 a month, which sounds workable until you realize that $720 has to cover everything else: co-pays, clothing, the birthday gift, the car registration, the check engine light that came on in February and has been diplomatically ignored since, the friend's bachelorette weekend where everyone says we'll keep it affordable, and then the Airbnb alone is $180 per person. Layla is not bad with money. She has a spreadsheet. She knows exactly where every dollar goes, which is exactly why she knows how little room there is. Here's what this actually feels like from the inside. It feels like scanning groceries at self-checkout and running the total in your head before the screen shows it. It feels like lying to your friends that you're not really hungry when they suggest a restaurant, because that's less humiliating than saying you can't afford the appetizer. It feels like doing math on whether your car can go one more week without an oil change, because $90 is not a small number when your margin is $720 and 3 things already need attention this month. And here's the part that nobody talks about clearly enough. The system at this income tier is not neutral. It is specifically, efficiently designed to extract money from people who can't afford buffers. Overdraft fees hit the people who can't maintain a minimum balance. Payday lenders charge 300% APR to people who can't wait 2 weeks. Rent-to-own furniture extract double the retail price from people who can't pay up front. The less money you have in America, the more expensive everything becomes. That is not a bug. That is a business model, and Layla is their most reliable customer. The Federal Reserve's 2023 survey of consumer finance found that the bottom 40% of American households have a negative savings rate when you account for debt accumulation. They're not just not saving, they're moving backwards. every month. Not because they're spending recklessly, because the fixed costs of being a functioning adult in America exceed what the bottom tier of incomes can sustainably carry, and the gap is filled with debt that charges interest, which makes next month harder than this one. Layla isn't failing, she's doing the math perfectly. The math is just rigged.
To understand why saving is so hard, you need to understand something about how the brain processes money. Your brain doesn't think in numbers, it thinks in feelings. When you see a price tag, your brain isn't doing math, it's doing something much more emotional. It's comparing the pain of losing that money against the pleasure of gaining whatever you're buying. Behavioral economists call this the pain of paying. And just like physical pain, it varies depending on circumstances. Here's a simple example. Imagine you're about to buy a $4 coffee. You tap your card, you don't even flinch. Now imagine someone asks you to hand them 4 individual dollar bills, one by one. Same amount. But it feels different, doesn't it? The physical act of counting out cash makes the loss more vivid, more real. This is why contactless payments, subscriptions, and app-based spending all make it so easy to overspend. They're specifically designed to reduce the pain of paying. When money leaves invisibly, your brain doesn't register the loss the same way. Now here's where saving enters the picture. Saving, by definition, asks you to feel the pain without getting any immediate pleasure. You're handing something over, real money, real purchasing power, and receiving nothing you can see, touch, or enjoy right now, just a number going up on an app. For the modern human brain, wired for immediate reward, that trade is genuinely difficult. It's not weakness, it's biology, and it gets more complicated. There's a cognitive bias called present bias, the brain's strong preference for rewards that are available right now over rewards that are available later. It's similar to what we discussed with investing, but it shows up even more aggressively with saving, because saving has no reward cycle at all. You save, and then nothing exciting happens. The money just sits there. This is why motivation alone never works for saving. Motivation is an emotion, and emotions are short-lived. You feel fired up about saving right after you watch a video like this, or right after you check your account and feel the familiar low-grade anxiety. But motivation fades within days, sometimes hours, and then the default behavior returns. The brain always returns to its defaults. So the question isn't how to stay motivated. The question is how to change the default. Here's the deeper truth that most financial advice completely misses. Saving is not a math problem, it's a systems problem. Think about it this way. Imagine you want to drink more water every day. You know it's good for you, you're motivated, but every time you feel thirsty, you have to walk to the kitchen, find a glass, turn on the tap, and fill it. Some days you do it, some days you grab whatever's closer. Now imagine you put a full glass of water on your desk every morning, right next to your keyboard. No decision required, no effort. It's just there. You'd drink more water, not because you got more disciplined, because you changed the environment. This is called choice architecture, the idea that how options are arranged shapes the decisions we make, often without us realizing it. It was developed by behavioral economists Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein, and it explains more about human behavior than almost any other concept in psychology. When it comes to saving, most people have terrible choice architecture. Their default is to spend. Saving requires a separate, deliberate, effortful decision every single month. And every time something competes for that money, a bill, an expense, a temptation, the spending default usually wins. The solution isn't to try harder, it's to flip the default. Here's a powerful example of this in action. Several years ago, researchers studied retirement savings enrollment in large companies. In some companies, employees had to actively sign up to contribute to a retirement plan. In others, employees were automatically enrolled and could opt out if they wanted to. When sign-up was required, participation hovered around 40 to 50%. When automatic enrollment was the default, participation jumped above 90%. Same people, same financial incentives, wildly different outcomes, just by changing what happened automatically. Your saving habits work exactly the same way. If saving requires a monthly decision, it will lose to spending most of the time.
If saving happens automatically before you ever see the money, it wins almost every time. There's also something called the fresh start effect, the psychological tendency to feel more motivated to pursue goals at the beginning of a new time period, a new month, a new year, a birthday, a new job. This is why people are always going to start saving next month. The fresh start feels real and motivating in the moment. But here's the problem with relying on fresh starts. They depend on motivation, which fades, and they reset the clock constantly, which means you never build the one thing that actually makes saving work long-term, a habit so automatic you don't even have to think about it at all.
So what does this actually look like in practice? The first shift is structural. Stop saving what's left. Start spending what's left after saving. This sounds simple, but it requires a real change in how you set up your finances. The goal is to make saving the first transaction of every pay cycle, not the last. The moment your paycheck lands, a fixed amount moves automatically into a separate savings account. Not a savings account you see every time you check your balance. A separate account, ideally at a different bank, where the money is slightly less visible and slightly less convenient to access. Out of sight, out of mind is not a flaw in human psychology. It's a feature you can use deliberately. When money is easily visible in your main account, your brain treats it as available. When it's sitting in a separate account with a different login, it mentally shifts into a different category. It starts to feel less like spending money and more like a number you're watching grow. That psychological shift matters more than people realize. Now, how much should you automate? Start with something that barely hurts. Even 5% of your income, even $50 a month. The amount matters far less than the habit at the beginning. Because here's what happens when you automate a small amount and leave it alone. You adjust. Within 2 or 3 months, you've completely adapted to living on the slightly smaller amount. Your lifestyle barely changes, and now you have a working system. Then you increase it slightly and adjust again, and increase again. This is called habit stacking with incremental progression, and it works because each small adjustment is below the threshold of real discomfort. Your brain never sounds the alarm. You never feel like you're sacrificing. One more thing. Label your savings accounts. This sounds almost too simple, but the research behind it is fascinating. When people name their savings accounts, emergency fund, new car, travel 2026, house deposit, they are significantly less likely to raid those accounts for impulse spending. The label creates a psychological identity for the money. Spending it stops feeling like using your savings and starts feeling like stealing from a specific goal. Your brain responds to stories, not numbers. Give your money a story. Let's come back to where we started. You've probably tried to save before. You've set intentions, made plans, maybe even had a few good months. And then life happened, or motivation faded, and the pattern reset. That's not a character flaw. That's what happens when a human brain built for immediate reward is asked to consistently make long-term decisions through willpower alone. It almost never works, and it was never supposed to. The people who are genuinely good at saving aren't better humans. They've just built systems that align with how their brain works rather than fighting against it. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on automation. They don't try to spend less. They make saving happen before spending is even possible. They don't set goals. They set defaults. And here's the quiet truth underneath all of it. Saving money at its core is about creating freedom. Not just financial freedom, though that matters enormously. It's the freedom of having options, of being able to make decisions based on what you actually want, rather than what you can afford in the moment. Every automated transfer, every labeled account, every month you let the system run without touching it, you're not just accumulating money, you're buying future choices. And those choices, when they arrive, will feel like the luckiest thing that ever happened to you. But it won't be luck. It'll be the system you built, quietly running in the background, doing its job while you lived your life.
So here's the honest version of what $100,000 actually is. It is the income level where the math stops actively working against you, where the fixed costs of being a functioning adult stop consuming everything and leave actual margin, where the background calculation, the one that runs constantly in the mind of anyone who has lived at the edge, finally goes quiet. It is the threshold where real savings becomes possible, where the emergency fund can be built without a perfect year, where the 401k can be funded without it being the thing that breaks the budget. It is the first number where you can stop trading time for survival and start, for the first time, trading time for something bigger. But it is not the finish line. It is the starting line for building actual freedom, and freedom is a different number that is built over years, not earned in a single salary negotiation. Here's what I want you to do before you close this video. Open your bank account right now. Add up your fixed costs, rent or mortgage, car payment, insurance, loans, subscriptions, everything that leaves whether you want it to or not. Subtract that from your take-home. That gap is the only number that actually matters. Not your salary, not your job title, the gap. If that number made you uncomfortable, good. Uncomfortable is the beginning of intentional. If it surprised you in a better direction than you expected, you're already further along than you think. Because the people who build real financial freedom aren't always the ones who earned the most. They're the ones who, when they crossed the threshold where the math finally cooperated, chose to build something with the margin instead of letting the lifestyle quietly expand to fill it. $100,000 gives you the silence. What you build in the silence, that's up to you. If this video changed how you think about your income, hit like and subscribe. There's a lot more of this coming, and next time we're going to talk about exactly what to do with that margin once you finally have it.